I think we can all agree that Tom Perez is a terrible DNC chair, but thanks to incredible pressure from outside of the party, the DNC has now voted to strip superdelegates of power. So first, let me give you some more information. Under the new rule, superdelegates, the members of Congress, DNC members, and other top officials who made up about 15% of delegates that year, will not be allowed to vote on the first ballot at a contested national convention. The change could dramatically reshape the calculus of future presidential campaigns, rendering candidates' connections to superdelegates less significant. Now, in my opinion, almost as important as stripping superdelegates of power is now how the media will be forced to actually report on primaries. So to set this up, let me give you a couple examples of how the Democratic primary was covered in 2016, and look for the count on the delegates.
And this was the delegate haul for those two candidates this weekend. And this is the daunting delegate lead that Secretary Clinton holds over Senator Sanders overall.
We know that, and we know what the Clinton spin's going to be tonight. They're going to win the night on delegates. Because guess what? That's a fact. They're going to win a night on delegates. There's no doubt about it. But we are seeing her weaknesses are where Donald Trump will have strengths. Okay? And with this same group of voters that Bernie Sanders is appealing to, those folks, I mean, this is why she ought to, when she goes into general election mode, be thankful Bernie Sanders is still there. Because learning how to win over a Sanders supporter is going to help her face off Trump.
Okay, so those two examples there where they show the total delegate count, they didn't break down, MSNBC didn't break down that a lot of those delegates at that time were superdelegates. Superdelegates that hadn't even voted yet for Hillary Clinton. Yet, because they were pledged to Hillary Clinton, because they had said that they were going to vote for Hillary at the convention, they were already giving her those delegates in the total count leading up to the end of the primary. So what this does is create this skewed sort of perspective on the primary where people watching at home think, wow, Hillary Clinton is way out ahead, when in reality, they're neck and neck. But because of that because of that superdelegate count included in the total and not even being broken down or discussed on MSNBC, people often end up voting for Hillary Clinton in the primary because they thought that she had the better chance at actually winning in the fall against Donald Trump. Because they saw that she had this big lead, they wanted to vote for the winner. So it creates this narrative where, well, I don't want to vote for the loser, so I'm going to vote for someone who I think is going to win. And therein lies a large part of the issue with superdelegates, which is how the media use them in the reporting. Now, while cutting out superdelegates here is obviously a fantastic change, it didn't go over very well with some members of the DNC. So let me give you an example. Quote, "What I witnessed was a political murder-suicide," said Bob Mulholland, a superdelegate and DNC member from California who helped organize opposition to the proposal. What the DNC voted was to take away the votes of governors, Congress members, and take away their own votes too. Absurd. So this is just a ridiculous reaction. This is somebody who had more power than the average person did and is simply whining about the fact that the Democratic primaries now are going to be more Democratic than they once were. So superdelegates were clearly an undemocratic process, giving more power to governors, Congress members, members of the DNC than the average person had. Now, what do you think that does to the average Democratic voter? It makes them realize that they have less power. And when you have less power, when you realize you have less power as a voting member of the public, you care less about elections because you think, well, my vote doesn't mean anything anyways because Bernie Sanders can win a state, but then Hillary Clinton can come out with more delegates because of superdelegates. It makes no sense. So all this whining, all this crying from people who once had this undemocratic power is just that, crying. Now, another aspect of this is that is rarely discussed are people that self-identify as independent. So more people identify themselves as independent than they do Democrat or Republican. So taking away the power of superdelegates now is an appealing factor to people who are independents that can now recognize that, hey, if I vote for a Democratic opponent in a primary, my vote will actually have an impact. And this isn't simply two parties that don't care about me, but if the Democratic Party is pushing forward policies through a politician like Bernie Sanders, someone I actually care about, and if I vote for him, my vote actually has power, then maybe I will get involved and am willing to vote for a Democrat. Now, let me show you, since I showed you a negative reaction, let me show you a positive reaction from someone in the DNC. Pointing to young Democrats rallying around Beto O'Rourke, the Texas congressman running for U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz, Texas Democratic Party Chairman Gilberto Hinojosa said those same people don't only want to do the work, they want to have a say in the decision-making process that this party engages in. And they really believe that the current system that we have doesn't give them the equal voice that they should have. If our party does not grow and get younger, Hinojosa said, we're doomed. Now, this is somebody who actually gets it. Even though he is a part of the Democratic Party establishment, he recognizes that in order to actually attract new people to the Democratic Party, you have to take steps to attract them. You can't simply whine and scream and say, you should vote for me because the other guy sucks. No, you should actually do something about changing what your party does, what your party represents, in order to go out there and get the votes that you need to win. So, to me, this is just an obvious step. And hopefully people are now going to recognize that the Democratic Party is actually taking some steps to reach out to new voters and not simply pushing people away with dumb policies like accepting fossil fuel donations. So, look, Tom Perez is still terrible. The DNC is largely still terrible. But despite all that, this move of removing the power from superdelegates is a step in the right direction.